Hello everyone, welcome to Reddit Visuals. I used to believe that if you stayed consistent, kind, and dependable long enough, people would eventually see your value. Turns out some people don't notice what you do until it's gone, and by then, it's usually too late. I never planned to be a stepdad. That wasn't some childhood dream of mine. I met her mother, Claire, when I was 42. She had a 12-year-old daughter named Ava. Claire was coming out of a long, bitter divorce, the kind that leaves everyone tired instead of angry. Ava's biological father lived 2 states away. He called on birthdays when he remembered, sent gifts late, and showed up just enough to be spoken about fondly, but never enough to actually help. When Claire and I started dating, I made a conscious decision. I wasn't going to try to replace anyone. I wasn't here to compete. I wasn't here to force a bond. I was just going to be present, show up, be steady, let things grow naturally. At first, Ava barely acknowledged me. She was polite in that clipped, forced way kids use when they don't want to be rude but definitely don't want to engage. I figured that was normal. She was a preteen, her parents had split, and now there was a new man in her mother's life. I gave her space. Too much, probably. Claire and I dated for about a year before I started spending more time at their place. I remember the first time I stayed for dinner. Ava ate quickly, excused herself, and disappeared into her room for the rest of the night. Claire apologized, but I told her it was fine. These things take time, and I meant it. I wasn't in a rush. Another 6 months after that, we moved in together. That was when things really started to shift. Not dramatically at first. Just small things. Ava would forget her lunch, and I'd drop it off at school. She'd need a ride somewhere, and I'd volunteer before Claire even had to ask. I'd help her with homework when Claire was working late shifts at the hospital. Over time, presence turns into routine, and routine turns into expectation. I became the one who drove her to school when Claire had early shifts, the one who packed lunches when Claire overslept. I learned what Ava liked: turkey and cheese, no mayo, with the crusts cut off, even though she was way too old for that, but she ate it better that way. So that's how I made it. I was the one who stayed up late helping with science projects that had been assigned 2 weeks earlier, but mysteriously became urgent at 10 p.m. I was the one who sat through orchestra recitals, freezing on folding chairs in poorly heated auditoriums, clapping until my hands hurt. The one who waited in the parking lot after practice, engine running, lights on, always on time. Sometimes I'd wait 45 minutes past when practice was supposed to end because they'd run over, and I never complained. I never announced these things. I never demanded gratitude. I thought that was the point of being reliable. You don't keep score. You just do what needs to be done, because that's what family does. Claire and I got married when Ava was 14. Small ceremony, nothing fancy. Her grandmother's backyard, close friends and family. Ava was a bridesmaid. She smiled in the photos. She seemed happy that day, or at least content. I remember hoping it meant she was starting to accept me as a permanent fixture in her life. We bought a house together, the 3 of us. Well, Claire and I bought it, but we picked it with Ava in mind. Good school district, big backyard, close to her friends. Ava got the bigger bedroom, the one with the bay window she'd wanted. I helped paint it the color she wanted, even though she changed her mind halfway through and I had to repaint the entire thing mint green instead of lavender. Took me 3 coats to cover the purple. My back ached for a week. I assembled furniture until my knees hurt from kneeling on hardwood floors. That white desk from a Swedish furniture store with instructions that might as well have been hieroglyphics took me 6 hours. Fixed her laptop twice when she downloaded something she shouldn't have. Paid for braces without a single discussion about reimbursement because we're a family now. That phrase, "we're a family now," does a lot of heavy lifting when you're trying to convince yourself that effort equals belonging. I convinced myself that the work mattered, that showing up mattered. That consistency would eventually translate into connection. I'd see other step-families struggle, heard horror stories from friends, and I'd think, we're doing okay. We're making it work. By the time Ava was 16, her tone had shifted. Not outright rude, just dismissive. Short answers. Eye rolls when I reminded her of curfews. Sarcasm that always seemed to land just on the safe side of disrespect. The kind that makes you look unreasonable if you call it out. "Can you be home by 11? "Sure, Dad." but the way she said dad was mocking, like the word itself was a joke. Claire noticed it too, but she brushed it off. Teenage phase, she said. She doesn't mean anything by it. You know how teenagers are. They're horrible to everyone. I told myself the same thing. Because the alternative that I was slowly becoming invisible despite doing more than I'd ever done was harder to accept. It gnawed at me, though. The lack of acknowledgement. The assumption that everything would just happen. The way my name never came up when Ava talked about her life to her friends, even though I was the one making most of it possible. I'd hear her on the phone sometimes, talking to friends in the next room. Yeah, my mom got me there. My mom helped me with that. My mom said I could go. Never me. Always her mom, even when it was me. Especially when it was me. I started paying attention to it more, keeping track, even though I told myself I shouldn't. But I couldn't help it. Her friend would say, "How'd you get to the concert last weekend?" "My mom took me." I took her. I drove 40 minutes each way, paid for parking, waited in the car for 3 hours because Claire was working a double shift. Her teacher would compliment her essay in front of other parents. My mom helped me revise it. I helped her revise it. We sat at the kitchen table until midnight, going through argument structure and thesis statements. It was like I was being erased in real time. And every time it happened, I felt smaller, less significant, more like a piece of furniture than a person. I didn't bring it up. What was I supposed to say? Hey, give me credit? That felt pathetic, so I swallowed it, kept showing up, kept being the reliable one, kept telling myself it didn't matter who got credit as long as she was taken care of. But it did matter. It mattered to me, and pretending it didn't was slowly eating me alive. The moment everything changed wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was casual, almost careless, which somehow made it worse. We were in the kitchen one evening. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were always my late meetings, but I'd wrapped up early. Ava was scrolling on her phone, backpack dropped in the doorway like always, right where someone could trip over it. I'd asked her 100 times to put it in her room. She never did. I reminded her she had practice in 20 minutes and asked if she wanted me to drive her, or if she'd arranged a ride. She didn't even look up, just kept scrolling. "I'll figure it out," she said. Flat. Disinterested. I said okay and went back to rinsing dishes. Claire wasn't home yet. She'd texted saying she'd be late, some issue at work with a difficult patient. A few seconds passed, and then Ava laughed at something on her phone. One of those sudden laughs, sharp and genuine. Then she said, not to me, but not quietly either, almost like she was thinking out loud, "You know, if you weren't around, nothing would really change." I froze. The plate in my hand hovered under the running water. Just for a second, everything went quiet except for the sound of the faucet. I asked her what she meant. My voice was level, calm, but my chest had tightened like someone had wrapped a band around it. She finally looked up, annoyed, like I'd interrupted something important. Her eyebrows were raised in that way teenagers do when they think you're being deliberately dense. "I mean, you're not my dad. If you weren't here, my mom would still handle everything. You're kind of replaceable." Replaceable. She said it like she was stating a fact, like she was telling me the sky was blue or water was wet. No anger, no cruelty, just certainty, just truth as she saw it. Matter of fact, clinical almost. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. Part of me wanted to. Part of me wanted to list everything I'd done, every early morning, every late night, every sacrifice that had gone unnoticed, every game, every recital, every parent-teacher conference, every time I'd rearranged my work schedule, every time I'd put her needs before mine. But I didn't. I just nodded and said, "Okay." That seemed to confuse her more than if I'd yelled. She blinked at me, her phone lowering slightly, waiting for something more. When nothing came, when I just turned back to the dishes like nothing had happened, she frowned slightly, then went back to her phone. I finished the dishes, dried my hands on the towel hanging by the sink, folded it neatly, walked upstairs to the bedroom I shared with Claire, sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. Replaceable. The word sat in my chest like a stone, heavy, cold, immovable. Was it true? Was I actually replaceable? Had I spent 4 years of my life being a stand-in, a substitute, a warm body filling a role that anyone could fill? When Claire came home later, smelling like hospital antiseptic and exhaustion, I didn't bring it up. Not that night. Not the next day. She kissed me hello, asked about my day, complained about hers. Normal. Routine. I needed to sit with it. I needed to be sure I wasn't just reacting emotionally. I needed to know whether this was a one-off comment from a thoughtless teenager or whether it reflected something deeper, something I'd been too busy to see. So I waited. And while I waited, I started paying attention differently. I started noticing patterns I'd ignored before, how Ava asked for things without asking. I need a ride to Sarah's. Not, can you take me? Just a statement of need, assuming fulfillment. How she assumed rides, meals, money, fixes, time. How thanks had quietly disappeared from her vocabulary, somewhere around year 3. How I was always the default option, never the choice, never the preference, just the thing that was there. I noticed how Claire had started assuming too. Can you grab Ava after school? Can you check her homework? Can you talk to her about the curfew thing? Not, would you mind? Not, if you have time. Just, can you? As if it was a given. As if it was my job. As if I'd signed a contract I didn't remember signing. I'd become infrastructure. Invisible until I broke down. Like plumbing or electricity. Nobody thinks about it until it stops working. That realization didn't come with anger. It came with clarity. Cold, clear, undeniable clarity. If I was truly replaceable, then removing myself shouldn't matter. If nothing would really change, then my absence would be as invisible as my presence had become. That's when I made a decision. Not out of spite, not out of revenge, out of exhaustion, out of self-preservation, out of a need to know if I actually mattered or if I was just a convenient placeholder holding space until someone better came along. I didn't announce it. I didn't threaten it. I didn't sit anyone down for a conversation. I just stopped. I stopped waking her up for school. I stopped making breakfast. I stopped reminding her about assignments. I stopped driving her everywhere. I stopped checking in. I stopped managing her schedule. I stopped being the safety net. I stopped doing all the invisible labor that had apparently gone unnoticed. I still said hello. Still answered when spoken to. Still treated her with basic respect. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't cold. I didn't give her the silent treatment. I didn't withdraw affection. I withdrew labor. The invisible, unacknowledged, apparently replaceable labor. Claire noticed, but not right away. She was busy. She assumed I was busy. She assumed things were still happening because they always had. That's the thing about invisible work when it stops. It takes a while for people to notice because they never saw it happening in the first place. The first consequence came fast. 3 days in, Ava missed the bus. She stomped into the kitchen at 7:45, already late, panic in her eyes, hair half-brushed, one shoe on, demanding to know why I hadn't woken her up. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my coffee, reading the news on my tablet. I looked up at her calmly. "I figured you'd handle it," I said. She stared at me like I'd spoken another language. "What?" "You said things wouldn't change if I wasn't around, so I'm just not around for that anymore." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Are you serious right now?" "Completely." "So you're just going to let me be late to school?" "I'm not letting you do anything. You're 16. You have an alarm clock. You have a phone with 17 different alarm options. You're capable of waking yourself up." She looked at me like I'd slapped her, like I'd betrayed some unspoken contract. Her face went red. "You're being a jerk." "Maybe, but I'm a replaceable jerk, so it shouldn't matter much." She grabbed her bag and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. She ended up being 40 minutes late to school, had to get a tardy slip, had to explain to her first period teacher why she was late. The office called Claire at work. Claire called me, confused, stressed, asking why I hadn't helped. I said very calmly, "Ava told me I was replaceable and that nothing would change if I wasn't around. I'm testing that theory." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear the hospital intercom in the background, someone being paged. "What?" I repeated what Ava had said, word for word. Claire sighed, that deep, exhausted sigh she did when she didn't have the energy to deal with something. She didn't mean it like that. She's a teenager. They say stupid things. You know that. Maybe. But I'm tired, Claire. I'm tired of being invisible. So I'm stepping back. If I'm replaceable, then replacing me should be easy. Claire tried to argue, tried to get me to see reason, but I told her I had to get back to work. We'd talk later. We didn't, though. Not really. Because Claire was busy. And I was done carrying things that weren't acknowledged. The second consequence took longer, but it hit harder. Ava had a regional orchestra competition 2 towns over. It was a big deal. She'd been preparing for months. First chair violin, solo piece, scholarship opportunities. She'd talked about it constantly. Normally, I'd take the day off work to drive her, wait around for hours, and drive her back. I'd done it the year before. Sat in a high school cafeteria for 6 hours, reading a book, just so she'd have a ride. That week, I didn't mention it. I assumed she and Claire had it covered. They didn't. Claire came to me the night before, already stressed, and asked if I could take Ava. "I can't," she said. "They just told me I have to cover Karen's shift. She called in sick and I'm the only one who can do it. Can you take her? Please?" I looked up from my laptop. "I have work." "Can't you take off?" "I could, but I'm not going to." Claire blinked. "What?" "I'm not taking her." "Why not?" "Because I'm replaceable. Someone else can do it." Her face changed, hardened. "You're really going to do this? You're going to punish her because she said something stupid?" "I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just no longer going out of my way for someone who thinks I'm unnecessary." She's 16. She's a kid. She's old enough to understand consequences. Ava was listening from the other room. I could tell because the TV had gone quiet, and the house had that specific silence that means someone is eavesdropping. Claire tried calling Ava's father. He didn't answer. Texted back 3 hours later saying he was out of town for work. Couldn't help. Sorry. Ava tried getting a ride from a friend's parent, but everyone was either busy or already going separately and didn't have room. She missed the competition. That night, I heard her crying in her room. Real tears. Not performative teenager tears. Frustrated, angry, humiliated tears. The kind that come when you realize you've lost something you can't get back. She blamed everyone. Her mom for working. Her dad for not answering. The situation for being unfair. She didn't mention me. Not once. But I knew. I knew she was starting to understand. Starting to see the outline of what had been there and was now gone. Weeks passed. The house changed. Laundry piled up because I'd been the one throwing in loads between work calls. I'd had a system. Ava's stuff on Mondays, towels on Wednesdays, sheets on Fridays. Now everything just accumulated until Claire had a rare day off and spent it doing 6 loads in a panic. Meals became chaotic because I'd been the one meal planning and grocery shopping. I'd made a weekly menu, kept the fridge stocked, made sure there were easy options for nights when everyone was busy. Now it was takeout 3 times a week, scrambled eggs the rest. Rides fell through because I'd been the one coordinating schedules. I'd kept a calendar. I'd known who needed to be where when. I'd been the logistics manager of the family, and without me, everything was just chaos. Deadlines were missed because I'd been the one keeping track of what was due when. I'd checked the school portal. I'd asked about assignments. I'd made sure things were turned in on time. Ava's grades slipped. Not drastically, but enough. A's became B's. B's became C's. Teachers started emailing Claire instead of me, asking if everything was okay at home. Claire was drowning. She came home exhausted every night, snapping at small things, overwhelmed by the sudden weight of logistics she'd forgotten existed. One night she said to me quietly while we were getting ready for bed, "I didn't realize how much you were doing." I just nodded. I didn't gloat. I didn't say, "I told you so." What would be the point? "Can things just go back to normal?" she asked. "I don't know what normal is anymore," I said. The social repercussions were worse for Ava than anything academic. Her friends stopped getting rides. I'd been the one driving everyone to movies, to the mall, to whatever hangout spot was popular that month. I had a car big enough for 5 teenagers. I didn't blast embarrassing music. I didn't ask intrusive questions. I was, apparently, the cool ride. Now they had to figure it out themselves, and teenagers are brutal when you become inconvenient. Sleepovers became complicated. I'd been the one coordinating with other parents, confirming times, managing logistics, doing the pickup and drop-off. Without me, things fell apart. Plans collapsed. Group projects suffered because Ava couldn't get to people's houses easily anymore. She started getting left out of study groups, left out of plans. One friend's parent, a woman I'd coordinated with dozens of times, asked bluntly in a group text. Ava showed her mom, "Didn't your stepdad used to handle this stuff? What happened?" That word used to started popping up everywhere, in conversations, in complaints, in the slow realization that something fundamental had shifted. Ava started staying home more, not because she wanted to, but because getting anywhere had become difficult. Her social life contracted. She got quieter, more withdrawn. I watched it happen. I didn't intervene. Claire asked me several times to just go back to normal. I told her I didn't know what normal was anymore, and I meant it. Then Ava's father finally showed up for a visit. This was about 6 weeks into my withdrawal. Big promises, grand gestures. He showed up in a new car, wearing expensive clothes, full of apologies and explanations. He took her out for a fancy dinner at that steakhouse downtown she'd always wanted to try. Bought her something expensive she'd been wanting, some designer bag I'd never heard of. Told her she deserved better. Told her he'd be around more. Told her he was sorry for being absent. Told her all the things she'd been waiting years to hear. Ava came home that night glowing. She talked about him for days. How great he was. How he really understood her. How much fun they'd had. How he was going to come see her more often. How things were going to be different now. I said nothing. I knew better. Claire was hopeful, too. "Maybe he's finally growing up," she said. "Maybe this is good for her." I nodded, stayed quiet. 2 weeks later, he canceled a planned trip. Said something came up with work. Last-minute thing. Couldn't be helped. Then he canceled another one. Then another. Then he just stopped responding to her texts. Ava spiraled. She lashed out at everyone. At her mom for not making him stay. At the universe for being unfair. At her friends for having present fathers. And eventually, at me. One night, about 3 months into this whole thing, she cornered me in the kitchen. I was making myself dinner. Just a simple pasta. Claire was working late again. "You're doing this on purpose," she said. Her voice was shaking. She'd been crying. Her eyes were red. "You're punishing me." I looked at her. Really looked at her. She looked tired. Younger than 16. Scared. I turned off the stove. Gave her my full attention. I said very quietly, "I didn't take anything away from you, Ava. I just stopped doing things you said didn't matter." "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" She opened her mouth, closed it. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know. I didn't think—" "You didn't think I did anything worth noticing." She flinched like I'd hit her. "I didn't mean it like that." "How did you mean it?" She couldn't answer. She just stood there, crying, and I felt something crack inside me. Not anger, not satisfaction, just sadness. For both of us. For the time we'd wasted. For the connection we'd never quite built. I didn't hug her. I didn't comfort her. I wasn't ready for that yet. I just said, "When you figure out what you meant, we can talk." Then I left the room. The final humiliation, though, I didn't plan it this way, came from an outside source. There was a school meeting about a month later. End of semester. Teachers, counselor, Claire, Ava. I was invited out of habit, I think, or maybe because my name was still listed as an emergency contact. I almost didn't go. But Claire asked me to, said it would look bad if I didn't show up, so I went. The meeting was about Ava's slipping grades, her missed assignments, her lack of participation. The counselor, a kind woman in her 50s named Mrs. Patterson, who I'd met several times over the years, went through everything methodically. Ava sat slumped in her chair, arms crossed, looking at the floor. Halfway through, Mrs. Patterson asked a simple question. Who handles Ava's scheduling, transportation, and academic follow-ups at home? Claire hesitated. She glanced at me. I kept my expression neutral. Ava stayed silent, staring at the table. The counselor waited, pen poised over her notepad. Finally, Claire said, "It's been complicated lately. We're working on it." Mrs. Patterson nodded slowly, making a note, then looked directly at me. "Mr. Hayes, you've been listed as the primary contact for most of Ava's academic communications for the past 3 years. Has something changed?" Every person in that room turned to look at me. 3 teachers, the counselor, Claire, Ava. I could have lied, could have deflected, could have made an excuse. Instead, I said, I was told I was replaceable and that nothing would change without me. So I stepped back to let Ava and Claire handle things themselves. The room went very still. You could have heard a pin drop. Mrs. Patterson's expression shifted. Understanding. Maybe even sympathy. She'd been doing this job long enough to read between the lines. One of the teachers, Mr. Carson, an older man who taught AP English and had emailed me dozens of times over the years about Ava's assignments, said quietly, "You were always very responsive." Ava was lucky to have that support. Past tense. Was. Had. Ava looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Her face was bright red. Her hands were shaking. After the meeting, no one spoke in the car. The silence was suffocating. Heavy. Claire drove. I sat in the passenger seat. Ava was in the back. When we got home, Ava went straight to her room and closed the door. Not a slam, just a quiet click that somehow felt worse. Claire and I finally had the conversation we'd been avoiding for months. She was angry at first, told me I'd made her look bad, told me I'd embarrassed Ava in front of her teachers, told me I was being petty, told me I should have handled it differently. I let her vent, let her get it all out. When she was done, when she'd run out of steam, I said, I've been doing the work of 2 parents while being treated like I'm neither. I needed to know if anyone actually noticed. Now I know. So what now? She asked. You just never help again? You're just done? I don't know, Claire. I honestly don't know. We stood there in our kitchen, in the house we'd bought together, and I realized how far apart we'd drifted without either of us noticing. We'd been so busy managing the logistics of life that we'd forgotten to actually connect. I need you to understand something, I said. I didn't do all of that for recognition. I did it because I thought we were building something, a family, a life. But when Ava said I was replaceable, it made me realize that maybe I was the only one who thought that. Maybe I was the only one who saw us as a unit. Maybe to her, I was just the guy who married her mom. Claire's eyes filled with tears. That's not true, isn't it? When's the last time Ava thanked me for anything? When's the last time she acknowledged that I do anything at all? When's the last time you did? She didn't have an answer. Ava didn't apologize, not right away, but she started knocking on my door again, hesitantly, asking questions instead of demanding answers, saying, "Can you help me with this?" instead of assuming. The tone was different, softer, more uncertain. The first time she said, "Thank you," again, really said it. Looking me in the eye was about 2 weeks after the school meeting. I'd helped her with a math problem she'd been stuck on for over an hour. Calculus, derivatives. I'm not great at advanced math, but I remembered enough to help her work through it. When we finally figured it out, when the answer clicked, she looked at me and said, "Thank you. Really, I mean it." It wasn't everything, but it was something. The real conversation came months later, almost 5 months after that kitchen comment that started all of this. One night, she sat across from me at the table. Claire was at work. It was just us. The house was quiet. "I didn't know how much you did," she said quietly, not looking at me at first. "I thought it just happened. Like, I thought that was just how things were. I didn't realize someone was making it happen, I didn't realize that someone was you. I nodded, waited. I'm sorry, she said, and her voice cracked. I'm really sorry. I was awful to you. I didn't see you. I didn't appreciate you. And I said something really hurtful because I was being a selfish brat, and I didn't think about how it would make you feel. I didn't think about you at all. And that's the worst part. You were there, doing all these things for me, and I just didn't see you. I looked at this kid, not a kid anymore, really who I'd spent years caring for, and I saw something I hadn't seen before. Actual remorse, actual understanding, actual growth. I appreciate that, I said. Are we okay? Her voice was small, scared. I thought about it. Really thought about it. We're getting there, I said. But things can't go back to exactly how they were. I can't be invisible again. I can't be taken for granted again. I need to matter, not just functionally, but actually matter. She nodded, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. I don't want you to be invisible. I want you to be here. Actually here. Not just as the guy who drives me places, but as someone who matters. Because you do matter, and I'm sorry it took me losing you to figure that out. It's been a year since then. Things are different now. Better in some ways, harder in others. I still help, but I don't carry everything. Ava asks instead of assumes. She thanks instead of expects. She includes me in conversations about her life instead of erasing me from them. When she tells her friends' stories now, she says, my stepdad, or sometimes just my dad, and I'd be lying if I said that didn't mean something to me. Claire and I are still working through things. She's more aware now of how much was on my shoulders. We're trying to distribute things more evenly. We go to therapy together. We're learning to communicate better. It's a process. Ava's relationship with her father is what it is. She's stopped expecting him to change. That's a painful lesson, but a necessary one. She's learning that love isn't just words and grand gestures. It's showing up. It's consistency. It's being there even when it's inconvenient. Last month, Ava had a college fair at school. I took the day off to go with her. We walked around looking at different booths, talking about different programs, different possibilities. She's thinking about music programs, wants to major in performance. Afterward, when we were walking back to the car, she said, "Thanks for coming. It meant a lot." Then she paused and added, "You know you're not replaceable, right? I was so wrong about that. I don't think I ever told you that directly. You're not replaceable. You're irreplaceable. And I'm sorry I ever made you feel like you weren't." I had to look away for a second because my eyes got hot and I didn't want to cry in a high school parking lot. "Thank you," I managed to say. "That means more than you know." She hugged me right there, a real hug, the kind she used to give her mom but never me, the kind that says, "You matter," without words. Now here's where some people might think I went too far, that I should have talked it out sooner, that I should have corrected her immediately, that I was cruel to let her struggle, that I was petty, that I was vindictive. Maybe they're right. Maybe I should have handled it differently. But here's what I know. Words never reached her. Absence did. Reality did. Consequences did. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone feel the weight of their own choices. Let them see what they took for granted. Let them understand that people aren't furniture. We're not just here to be used without acknowledgement. I don't regret what I did. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that it took absence to create presence. But I don't regret stepping back. Because the relationship I have with Ava now is real. It's built on mutual respect, on acknowledgement, on genuine appreciation, not on unspoken expectations and invisible labor. So tell me, was I wrong for stepping back and letting the silence teach the lesson? Or would you have done the same? Drop a comment and tell me what you would have done in my place. Would you have confronted her immediately? Would you have let it slide? Would you have tried family therapy first? Or would you have done exactly what I did? And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video and subscribe to Reddit Visuals. It really helps the channel grow, and we've got a lot more stories like this coming your way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.